So hello, once again. Thanks a lot for tuning in. This is Steve Taylor. I'm the lead advisor over here at Merited Wealth. And we have today another episode of a different style to our podcast that I like to call Thoughts in Growth Mode. And it's really, for those that are out there, self-employed, doing it for themselves, business owners, kind of having a conversation. Sometimes I'll speak about a certain topic that I'm interested in, or I bring in an expert like we have today to talk through this and really kind of just go through these different ideas, these different concepts, and hopefully presenting the information out there in a format that you, the listener, the watcher out there, might potentially find valuable. And so, the topic that we have today is something that's really affected me personally in my business life and my personal life. So recently, about a year and a half ago, I joined what's called a mastermind group. And for those of you that maybe aren't familiar with it, it's basically a bunch of different business owners in your particular business, or maybe different businesses, that meet over certain times and go through ideas like best practices and try to help each other in their business and hold them accountable and everything through that. And we brought up a lot of business driving systems. The one that we've worked on is called EOS, which many of you may know about, to help build our business. But of recent, in our conversations, we had something that one of the mastermindees brought up, this concept, this book called Profit First. And I said, okay, profit first, I get it. This concept that you need to kind of pay yourself first and go through it. And so as we would in the group, we all went out there and we read the book. And initially, when I was reading it, it starts out very dramatically about certain people that are working really hard, making no money, to a certain extent. And I was initially saying, well, that's not me, right? I'm not that person. I don't have those issues. But then that was just kind of like he admits that he's trying to shock you and pull you into the kind of the conversation. And then, as we start going more and more into the book, really a lot of stuff and a lot of things learned from it are like, oh wow, this is these I'm not doing that well, or yeah, I am seeing these problems. So that's really where this conversation is driven. And I'd like to and introduce our guest, Abby Johnson. And Abby will can you tell the audience a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Yeah, so my company is Matterhorn Business Development. We're a family owned and operated business coaching firm. And one of our pillars of services is I am certified in the Profit First system. So Profit First was written by Mike Michalowicz. And you can see that in the background if you're watching this. I have it in the background. But I actually trained with his team and him, and I'm certified in this system. I help people implement it because you can certainly go read the book. And after listening to this podcast, I definitely encourage you to read or listen to the book. But sometimes there are nuances to every business, and that's where a certified professional like myself comes in. So I really help my clients profitably grow. Some coaches focus just on growth. But what we were finding here at Matterhorn is we would help our clients grow their business 20% in a year. And at the end of the year, they, quote, still had no money. So that's a red flag, right? That's
Yeah.
not right. So that's when we found Profit First and added that to our toolbox, so to speak. So I make sure that my clients are not only growing, but they're actually being profitable, because a lot of times as revenue grow, expenses grows at the same rate. And then what are we doing here? We're working just as hard to make $1 million as we were to make $100,000. And that's not why any of us got into business, right? So my goal for people is really to achieve that financial freedom through their business, and Profit First is one of the ways I help them do that.
Yeah. So Abby, as I was going through the book and I was, reading through it, a lot of things that probably the biggest thing that, started to jump out to me was this idea. And what the book really goes through is talking about setting up a lot of these different bank accounts, allocating sums to it, and try to stick within that framework and structure as you're making your business decisions. Because what really happened to me, and I think a lot of other business owners, out there, is that when you have your own, business, and, it would kind of, it really, is an offshoot of your personal life and your personal spending. And what we were doing is we were spending freely, and too liberally, individually. And what I would do is I would just, as I would spend, and I would, have these credit card bills that come out, I would just, if I had money in the bank account to pay that off, or maybe pull it out of the operating account of my business or anything to pay it off. It was kind of like this spend first, pay later, attitude that I couldn't break that, couldn't break that cycle. And I think a lot of the other, business owners out there are like that, right? When they say, I don't have any money, so it's this spend first, pay later. So profit first, walk us through, I guess, the initial kind of, maybe the macro concept and the setting it up, because it's allocate first, pay from the allocation, and stay on track, right? Maybe that's a simple way
Right.
of putting it, but how would you describe it?
Yeah, so there's a phrase in Profit First that profit is not an event, profit is a habit. So normally as business owners, we get to the end of the year, usually the next quarter after the end of the year, like right now when you're getting ready to do taxes, and your accountant shows you your P&L and says, look, you profited $30,000 last year. Yay. And you're excited, you profited $30,000. But then when you open your bank account, there's not $30,000 sitting in an account there. So where did that money go? We are, as business owners, we shouldn't be sitting around to be told by our accountant what we profited. And the thing about P&Ls and accounting is it's not an accurate representation of cash flow. So if you're operating only looking at your P&L, you're operating off of missing information. But who of us wants to go get an accounting degree and figure out how to interpret P&Ls and balance sheets and cash flow statements in order to understand where our money is going? None of us have the time or probably the want to do that. And so basically, Profit First makes managing your cash very simple. It makes profit a habit. It means you're setting aside for it instead of waiting at the end of the year or the end of the quarter to figure out how much profit you actually, and when I say profit, I mean cash in the bank, profitable cash in the bank. So instead of waiting around for it, you're actively setting aside for it. And the way we do this is through a system of bank accounts, like you mentioned. And there's 5 bank accounts. So the income account is all your deposits go into this one account, and that's the only purpose of that account. When we have one bank account where all the money is going in and all the money is going out, you have a really big revenue week and you say, oh, I have all this money now. I can go buy new equipment. I can get myself a new computer. I can go get myself those new AirPods I've been wanting. And,
I'm guilty. Yeah, I have a big balance. I'm comfortable. I don't need to go
right.
get new business, right? This is great.
Right. But what that one bank account isn't telling you is you didn't think about paying yourself. You didn't think about setting aside for taxes. I think the majority of my clients before implementing Profit First would probably, get the bad news from their accountant each year. You owe X amount of taxes, and they'd be scrambling to come up and pay this tax bill when you could be setting aside for it throughout the year. So separating out your deposits makes it a little less blurry of where you stand financially. The next account you have is a profit account, and that you take out your profit first. So the very first account you put money into every, twice a month, however often you do allocations. That's kind of another part of this conversation. I could literally do a whole hour presentation on this. So I'm really shortening it here.
Great.
But the next account is profit. You set aside a percentage specifically for profit and you take it off the top. So a lot of people think they can't do this, but I really like in the book he uses this phrasing of, if you can run your business on $100, you can run it on $99. So if you get anything from this podcast today, go open a savings account and just start putting 1% aside and calling it profit. The next account is owner's pay. A lot of business owners either aren't paying themselves regularly, they're making less than some of their employees. And again, we did not get into business to be working harder than ever, making less than we would at a day job. So the owner's account again segments off that money so you can see this is my money to pay myself as the owner and the work I'm doing within the business. The next account is a tax account. Like I mentioned, you want to be setting aside for taxes so that you don't get sticker shock at the end of the year or at the end of the quarter when you need to pay the IRS. And then finally, the last account that gets funded is your operating expense account where all of your expenses come out of. So what happens is if you make $10,000 in a week and after allocating to profit, owner's pay, and tax, you really only have $6,000 to spend. If all that money had been in one account, you would think, I have $10,000. I'm going to go buy a bunch of stuff. But now when you only have $6,000 in that operating expense account, it really reins in unnecessary spending. And you see now, okay, I have $6,000, rent's coming out, payroll's coming out. I really can't go buy extra stuff this week. I'm gonna have to wait until, we get some more money in to go buy that fancy computer I want to buy.
Yeah. I was seeing that. That was really interesting, Abby, when I started, and I'm just starting to implement that, is all the different accounts, right? And the allocations and putting those things in there that when the cash flow hits the account, it really is important to manually go in and kind of make those allocations. What I've also found is, I always was a big proponent of making things simple, right? Put it on a
Yeah.
credit card, pay it out. And I've noticed the more that I had that all automated, but it left me with so much uncertainty. I wasn't sure, where the automation was coming. It was going to come out at the wrong time out of this one account. It made it real challenging, right? Because I had no system and no accountability within myself. So, I really think that the mindset that goes into this, and somebody that wants to, they read the book, they go through this process, they want to feel like they're starting to get in control. It takes a lot of accountability, right? It takes a lot of stick to itness. So for those that maybe they're the sole owner of the business, right? There's no other owners. What do you normally find, or what do you see the best way to kind of be able to set up that accountability system for them to start implementing profit first?
I mean, really, it is a kind of a new habit you have to get used to, every 2 weeks or whatever it may be, doing those transfers. But I find once people start doing it, they really love it. I had a client who was maybe a little skeptical, or he wasn't super like excited to implement profit first, but I said, this is what we're going to do. This is why we're going to do it. And he kind of just trusted me and let me, direct him. And I wasn't sure how it was going to go. He was kind of skeptical of it. But once he did his first couple allocations, he was blown away, and he was like, "Oh my gosh, I see where I can spend my money now." So it might take a couple weeks to get over that initial newness about it. But once you start getting in the groove, you start to enjoy it. And I actually like have fun doing my transfers each week. Like it's kind of dorky. But I get excited to see like, okay, how much is in this account now? How much is in my tax account now? So I think you start to enjoy the process, and then it becomes pretty easy to just keep it as a regular thing that you're doing.
Yeah, I'll tell you, my wife and I have driven it down to our personal life to really hold
Yes.
ourselves more accountable, setting up different accounts, doing our allocations. And while initially it was probably the typical marriage fighting over money conversation we've had 1,000 times, now that we've slowly gone through this and we've seen how it works, and we kind of get excited and we talk about all these different money's coming in to allocate, and it is fun, right? It's become
Yeah.
fun and kind of a gamification of it to kind of set it apart.
Yeah.
And also because she sees the difference in me, that I'm not just totally nervous. We're a single income household. I'm not totally nervous about just figuring out where am I going to pull from to pay off these credit card bills.
Right.
It has become fun. Now, what really initially about when I listened to the book, like I did and I was saying before, is that when he was describing these people that don't pay themselves, I said, oh, that's not me. I pay myself plenty. In fact,
Mm-hmm.
I was paying myself too much, right? I was using the business as a bank account. So for those that maybe were like me and just basically pulling every extra dollar and couldn't seem to have any reserves, pulled up in their account, what are some good, techniques or thoughts about someone like that who's maybe been taking too much money out of their business and that's kind of stifling their business growth?
Yeah, and it can put, like you said, it can put a strain on the business that way where you can't afford to hire staff because you're funding your personal life. So, unfortunately, that is usually a more difficult conversation of what's happening in your personal spending that is requiring you to have to kind of raid the business, so to speak. So, I do help some of my clients set up profit first personally, like you have in place. And it kind of just makes them more aware of what they're spending personally. Like, wow, we are, doing Uber Eats 5 times a week. Maybe we shouldn't do that anymore. Or honestly, a good starting point for anyone, business or personal, is just look at your bank statement because so, these days, especially with online banking and everything, subscription based everything, we're so used to just everything coming out of our account automatically. We aren't sitting there writing checks every day like we used to, and being conscious of the money we're paying out. It just all is automatically coming out. So if you just pull your bank statement for the last month, or your primary credit card if you're, getting points on your credit card or whatever it may be, just look at what came out of your bank account. And I did this with a client once, and there was like a subscription for a software that I want to say was $50 to $100 a month. And he said, I thought I canceled that a year ago, but it had still been coming out of his account for a year. That was like $1,200 that was just gone in the wind. Yes.
Guilty.
Yes.
That's what happened to us. We started going through the credit cards, and I had noticed, I kind of watch over it, but I noticed this one
Yeah.
charge kept coming through, and I do track our spending, so I put it to my wife's clothing, and I'm
Mhm.
like, and finally we're sitting out there, and I'm like, what's that? She's like, that. Oh no, I canceled that a year ago. I'm like, no, you didn't. Right? It was like
Yeah.
this something she had signed up for. And I mean, your point is really good, right? I'm a fan of keeping things, simple and automating things. But now when that happens, it all slips by. So now as we step
Yes.
back, like in our personal life, we're using cash, Abby. We're giving ourselves
Wow.
cash.
Yeah.
We're spending cash. And believe it or not, everywhere does still accept cash. Not that many
It
places
does.
don't accept.
Yeah.
Now, you have to go a little more slowly through it, through every process when you're doing cash, or I'm starting to write some checks again. But what's great is that when you slow down, right, and you manualize it, right, you take out the automation, you're thinking about it. Well, do I really
Hmm.
need this,
Exactly.
or what does that cost? Because I think a lot of people that would be resistant to staying in the system, oh, I don't have time for that. I'm too
Hmm.
busy and this and that. And I would almost argue, well, you don't have time not to do it. This is the stuff we need to do. Now, to that extent, everything's really manual right now because we're in the first like 60 days of implementing the system.
Hmm.
As someone goes on and becomes more experienced in utilizing profit first, does the manual part of it, do the allocations and everything, do they start happening faster, or is that not the point that they should keep taking the time that they take to put you through that, or what do you see or experience as people are in the system longer?
So it depends on the person and their own behavior and what is going to benefit them. So, for example, with my clients, I create a custom spreadsheet for them where they can put in their income for the week and it automatically does the calculations of how much needs to go in each account. And then that's really great for me as their advisor, because then I can go in at the end of the quarter, see how things are going, etc. But if you don't have that benefit and you're doing this on your own, manual is kind of the only way to do it. The only alternative is if for your business bank accounts, there is a bank. It's being released this month. The announcement has not been made yet, so I don't know when this video is going up or if I'm supposed to be saying this. But there is an online banking platform called Relay that is going to be the official Profit First banking platform. And they obviously have already been established and working with other business owners, but they now are adding in a Profit First feature so that you can have your 5 accounts and you can automate the transfers. So you can go in and create transfer rules of, 5% to profit, 40% to owner's pay, whatever it may be. And those transfers can be automatic. I know for me personally, I do like doing the manual transfers just because it makes me aware of, okay, this is how much this is how much went into operating expenses this week. I also look at my upcoming bills and make sure that there's enough money to cover those bills. I do a whole extra kind of financial planning session outside of the transfers. So I do, it's cool that there is going to be this automated feature. But personally, I think when you're manually doing it, just like I was saying with writing a check, you're more aware of how much you're spending. Same goes with the transfers, is you're more aware, like, wait a minute, this is not enough going into my operating expense account this week. I need to boogie and start getting on my marketing. Like, what's going on? It starts
Yeah.
making you aware of other things happening in the business that you might not have noticed.
Yeah, I'd always have conversations with clients and with my wife regarding spending because, I thought I was better at it than her, right? And that was more, but I wasn't. She would maybe make a bunch of small unnecessary expenses, but I would justify a big one, right?
Mhm,
And you go through this, and it's kind of like I would say, how do you feel the spending, right? How does
mhm,
it affect you? And she always said, she would always wanted cash. Like the Profit First system started from the old concept of setting up envelopes, right? And putting
yep.
cash in those envelopes of your parents. And she said her parents did that, right? That was something that they did. And she felt that would be better for her. And that's how she would feel it. And so that's how we're doing it. So now I think, kind of my cash spend, we set up personally like our personal spending. We're setting up different accounts or just cash, right? To try to rein that in. And we're still navigating where we put all our family joint expenses in there. I think for me in the past with cash, I can be a little free with, but I'm going to use a debit card. I set up a separate bank account. I'm going to
Mhm,
use a debit card to see the actual cash come out. I feel that immediately. Like I've started to use a debit
mhm,
card on some of my Profit First accounts for certain marketing or expenses that are out there because I was feeling it more. And so I think really
mhm,
that feature, like to your point, right, everybody's different, but
mhm.
whatever, however you can feel this and see this and slowly go through it, probably, that's the way you should go.
Yeah, and that's what I love about the system is it's just leveraging our normal human behavior of I mean, how many times a day do we or a week do we open our banking app
Yeah.
to look at what's in our account? So now you're going to be able to do that, but it's going to be segmented and show you what you can spend in each of these categories. So that's great that you guys are both doing what's going to work for you, and I'm sure with my husband and I it's the same way. We both have to, I manage the money, of course.
Of course.
But I all I need to do is say, this is your card, this is the card you get to use. And that's good for him.
Yeah, and we're starting to pull this to give this to our oldest son is off to college and he's really responsible. So we don't have a problem with him. But our youngest one, he has no concept of money. And we had
Yeah.
he had a credit card on our account, and he was just spending whatever. And now we're
Mhm.
reining him in, and he has a debit card from the bank, and Chase Bank that we use has a really cool thing for kids, allocating sums to different sub accounts within there,
Oh,
for them.
nice.
And he's kind of fighting it. No, but Dad, that's not this. It's not enough. That's not that. So I have to slow down and walking them through it and like teaching them better behaviors. Well, this is your budget. If not, most of it's food. Then eat at home, right?
Mhm.
Groceries. I told them this morning. Groceries are in the house, and that will not go against your budget. So if you're smart and you want to take your food to school, right? You're going to have more money set over there for whatever it is that you want to do, to hang out with your
Yep.
friends or to buy something on Amazon, right? And it's really to teach all of us from the ground up to have this more, this better, accountability and cognizance of what we're spending on and what things cost. I mean, that's the biggest thing that I got through this and going through this process is that when you're so automated, like you say, that one account and it's all in the same place, you simply don't know what stuff costs.
Yep.
And I'm seeing, I'm like,
Yep.
oh my God, I wouldn't continue to do that if I knew that's what that costs.
Yes, exactly. And that's why I said if anything, just take out a bank statement and look at what's coming out of your account, and you're gonna find something that you weren't aware of, two Netflix charges or whatever it may be, in this automated society. Like you said, it makes things easier, but it also makes it easier to be unaware of it.
Yeah, yeah. And so Abby, as someone maybe listening to us here, and they decide maybe they'll go get the book, or maybe I'm a fan of podcasts, right? Many times I'll listen to
Hmm.
the podcast. Well, I don't need to go to the book now, right? Or something
Hmm.
like that. And maybe they're conceptualizing pretty quickly what we're kind of saying here, and they want to say, hey, listen, I just can go out and do this. I mean, what would be your tips or advice, your best thoughts for someone trying to implement this system right out the gate, right? It might not be that easy. I'm sure you've had many people start up and then stop. What would be kind of your worded advice to get them going in the right, well, not just maybe the profit first, but kind of taking control of their business and personal spending so that they don't feel that they're always out of money or that they have no money?
Yeah, I think you can kind of do it on a gradient, kind of like I was talking about, where, okay, first step is just bringing out your bank statement and looking at what's actually coming out of your account, cutting, expenses that you don't actually need. I definitely suggest either reading Profit First, listening to Profit First. We have a YouTube channel. If you type in Matterhorn Business Development, we've got a Profit First playlist as well as many other business growth videos. So if you're more of a video person, we kind of do an overview there. If you're going to do an actual assessment of the business, I think that might be the only thing we're missing in our playlist of Profit First. So you should still get the book either way. But YouTube is a nice quick way to get the information. Um, so just take it one step at a time and try to stick with it. And like I said, you can start with 1% in the profit account. Or I had I'm trying to remember which client was. I remember having a client who couldn't pay themselves. They literally weren't taking a salary. And it seemed kind of unreal to them how this was going to work. But I just started their owner's pay account at a very low percentage. They were a new business, so that was an issue of they needed to make more revenue, but still in that new startup phase, they needed to pay their bills. So we just started at a low percentage for profit, owners pay, and tax, and slowly gradiently built those up. And it's something you can do in your personal life as well. Start putting 1% aside for um, a vacation or a new home or whatever it may be. And as you pay more attention to your expenses, you're going to be able to put more percentage towards profit, owner's pay, all of that.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's great advice. I was at a conference this past week, and the speaker was talking about, how do you do something that's impossible, right? You think in your mind's not possible. What do you do it? And he starts breaking it down. Well, you don't do it all at one time. You do it.
Yeah.
Okay, well, can I take this first step? Does that seem doable? Yeah, I could do that. Okay, you take that first step. Okay, now can you take this second step, right? And get there and you see that's doable. And before you know it, you're 10 steps down. And from what looked like impossible at step one is now done. So Abby, I
Yes.
really appreciate your time here. And for those listening, we'll post a link to your YouTube videos about all the great stuff that you have up there, and they'll have your information, our information, everyone to reach out on any of this. But I hope anyone who's listening to this or watching this, I hope you find this find this helpful. And really, if you are one of those people that's feeling like, I just can't get ahead, I have no money, I don't know how this is going to change, this is a great system, I can tell you, to help you get there and start getting to where you think it's really doable.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and I totally agree with that. And thank you so much for having me on.
Thanks, Abby.